This podcast episode delves into the historical imprisonment of Native Americans. This episode includes discussions of trauma, loss, and cultural resiliency. There is rich diversity among Native American cultures. Individual tribes, nations, and communities are still in existence. This episode talks about the Mescalero Apache tribe. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of your emotional well-being while listening. Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It is a new month and a new theme at the Gals Guide Library. Our theme this October has a literary theme with a twist. We are talking about the women of folklore. So folklore is mostly an oral tradition that is wrapped up in beliefs and cultures and communities, and they can be spooky, especially this time of year, but they can also be inspirational and every shade in between. So let me introduce our community of folks this month. See what I did there? Folks, community. Okay, so first up, she is head librarian of Gals Guide, but also she is now a married woman. That's right. So it's Bonnie, Catherine, Just Fillenworth. Yay, Bonnie!
Very
nice. So Bonnie, introduce yourself to the good people.
You forgot the Mrs.?
Oh, Mrs. Oh, you're right.
God.
Mrs. There you go. Yes, and if you need like an Esquire added to the end of it, Reverend, Jedi. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yes.
But tell the good people all about yourself.
My name's Bonnie, and I do paintings of women throughout history.
Woot woot.
And I just got my Master of Library and Information Sciences degree.
Yes!
Wow, congratulations.
And just got married.
Woo!
So now I'm going to take a nap.
Yes. You've done a lot this year.
Yes.
Just saying. Very proud of you. I love it. Well, next up, she is president of Gals Guide. It is Katie Young. Yay!
Stop with the excitement.
Katie, tell the good people about yourself and why they should be excited.
Yeah. Because I run a bitchin' book club.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. We should rename it to Bitchin' Book Club.
Okay, I'm on it. There you go. We did
Get
have
on
the
that.
Stitch and Bitch, so Bitch and Book Club.
Maybe we need to... Well, okay. We don't need to bring that back.
Okay.
But anybody that doesn't get our newsletter, did you see... Or anybody that does, did you see our calendar this month?
It's great, isn't it?
Did you get, like, your fingers cramped up writing all the things happening at the library for
It's
this
a
month?
spooky, wonderful month at the library.
It is.
Yes.
So I've always loved October the most.
Yes. Well, it has your
It
birthday
has my
in it.
birthday, and this one's an extra special one. I'm turning 40 years old.
Spooky.
You're turning 40.
I'm turning.
My oldest baby is turning 21.
And she's going out to Sid's to party with us, right?
She
Nice.
cannot confirm nor deny that she wants
She has
anything to
been
do with us on her
denying.
21st birthday.
She's been denying, but tell her I only turned 41.
Yes.
And she
So,
only turns
this
21.
is true.
We should definitely manipulate
Correct.
her into drinking.
I think
Absolutely.
It's the
absolutely.
responsible thing to do.
It is. We're definitely responsible. Yes.
And what better place than Sid's to
Right?
go
Yeah.
here locally
Sure.
to kick off her
Yeah.
drinking career.
It's the word career that I think she might argue with. But still a novel idea. Yes, I'll get on that. Well, next up, it is the Director of Community Outreach at Gals Guide. It is Barb Conlon, everyone. Yay! So, Barb, introduce yourself to the good people.
So all of these people have been so busy. I'm retired. I'm not busy at all. So
That's why we lean on you for support.
I come and support and hang out, and it's been a fantastic September. It was great. Looking forward to everything going on in October, and we're hopping this month. So yeah, looking forward to all the fun stuff.
We're just a couple of ghouls. See what I did there?
Just
hanging out.
I didn't even get that one in the newsletter. That would have been great.
That's
So,
a good one.
Next up is welcome a first-timer to the show. It is Cassie Simcox, everybody. Yay! Cassie, introduce yourself to the good people.
Yes. Well, as Leah said, I'm Cassie Simcox. First time on the pod, long time advocate and fan of women's rights.
Yes!
So, yes.
Yay!
Yes.
Then you're in the right
perfect
spot.
fit, yes. So, very excited to be here. And I'm also very excited to do the 12-week writing course here
Yes!
guys, starting
Very
this
nice.
upcoming week.
I know. It's going to be running all the way through December.
I
12 weeks of
know.
awesomeness. I'm
12
so glad
weeks
you're
of
in.
Awesomeness. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get
Yes.
started.
Oh, it's going to be good. I mean, Barb just signed up today.
Yay, Barb!
Oh, did I get that on air? Did I get
can't
it?
believe you
I
did
got it recorded?
So there may have been a little harassment going on
Barb.
every time she sees me. Almost like when I say, Leah,
Have you got your passport yet?
have you started your passport?
That's
app
totally
yet?
fair. This is totally fair.
Could've-
Yes,
could've
exactly.
done a swap.
I know, right? I should have got my
I
passport.
got my task done.
Done. I have not got mine. So as for me,
You're not leaving the country anytime soon.
yeah, I know, right? Exactly. No, I do need to get that passport.
You do.
I will get it done. See? Tit for tat. It'll totally
That
work
lucky
out.
task.
So as for me, I'm Dr. Leah Leach. I'm the executive director of Gals Guide, and I'm super excited about Folklore Month. I absolutely love like myths and legends. It's one of my favorite like geek out nerdy things. So you put that together, you add some storytellers like into the mix, and also add that to October, and it's just like it's a cauldron of deliciousness is what I'm going for. So it'll be exciting. So here's something really weird that I'm gonna say.
Oh no.
Barb, are you ready to go first?
I am ready.
It's really, it's like
It's
Scooby-Doo,
weird.
where
Yes.
it's really just me in a mask.
Right. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Oh, that would be great. Exactly.
If we could pull
Yes,
that off,
I
that
know.
would be fun.
It's a auditory
I
medium.
know.
So, yes, exactly. But yeah, in a weird twist of events where normally Bonnie goes first, it is Barb going first. So who do
I'm
you
excited.
who do you have for us to start off Folklore Gals?
I know as we were all growing up, we probably learned about Native American history and about warriors
Yes.
like Sitting Bull and Tecumseh and Geronimo. And those warriors were celebrated as defenders of Indian territories and courageous fighters of the resistance.
Yes.
Not the Star Wars kind, Leah.
No, damn it.
Calm yourself.
I
Calm
was
yourself
very
down.
excited about the resistance.
But just like all of our history, there are other stories, lesser known stories that haven't been told, stories of the women warriors.
Woot.
Who were also part of the Indian resistance. So I'm going to talk about Lozen, an Apache warrior. She's one of those lesser known historical characters.
Mhm.
So some of her stories are probably rooted in reality. Some have probably been embellished a bit over time.
You get to.
You know, you guys can decide what that is. So first, a little bit. She was born in the 1800s. But before I jump into that, I'll talk a little bit about Apache culture during that time.
Sweet.
So you can understand kind of what she was born into. In the 1800s, there were at least 7 Apache bands and many clans inhabiting an area known as Apacheria. Have you guys ever
Ooh.
heard of that before?
No, but it
No.
makes sense.
Yeah, well, right. It does
Yeah.
totally make sense. It's where northern Mexico, eastern Arizona, and southwestern New Mexico are now.
Makes sense.
So the Apache clans and bands tried to coexist in that space, but they were often found to be at war even with one another. So they kind of went at it a little bit in that area. The Chaihin band, also known as the Eastern Chiricahua,
Gotcha.
or red painted people. I'm going to call them red painted people because it's really a lot easier to say.
Gotcha.
They were one of the bands that were living in this area. They're recognized by, you've always probably seen the red paint.
Like
on
kind
their
of
face.
over their nose
Yes.
and down their cheeks and
Yes.
stuff. Okay, all right,
So a lot
gotcha.
of times when they're doing ceremonies or when they're in battle, they'll put that red paint on, and that's what they were known for. But this particular band, the Red Painted People, they were very nomadic, so they roamed this area. They were very aggressive. They were known for being very aggressive. So it's into this band that Lozen is born. A little bit more about kind of their culture. Traditional Apache religion was based on the belief in the supernatural and the power of nature. So I think we probably all knew that part, right? I mean, they're very nature-based. They're centered on the earth. The culture was a matriarchal culture.
Yes.
One of their deities was called the White Painted Woman, and she was at the center of their creation story. Her themes, Leah, you're going to love this.
Yes.
Her themes were maturity,
Yes, please.
cycles,
Yes.
femininity, and tradition.
Can we just bring this back?
Yeah, so I loved her.
Like every day?
As I learned about her.
Sweet.
She could be depicted as a young woman and an older woman, and they said that she could change her appearance. If she appeared before you, you might see either one. Historians report that the Apaches, this is a lot of background, but it all play in, so hang with me.
All good.
Historians report that the Apaches always had women who were willing to fight right behind their male warriors.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Young Apache women were actually trained for battle. In their youth, they were typically good with guns when guns became available.
Yeah.
But they were obviously also good with bow and arrows and knives.
Sweet.
Those were probably the two that they mostly use. So the woman, this was not her primary responsibility, but she was expected to help in battle if needed. And historians would say that if you went into battle against a male Apache warrior and you killed him, you better be prepared, because it was the woman behind him that was going to step forward. And she was also the one that was hiding and protecting the children. So you were actually going to go to battle with Mama Bear.
Who's now very pissed off.
Very pissed. You just killed her husband, probably, or a brother, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you were coming after her and her kids. So she was going to come after you. Opponents who underestimated these women were usually in for a big surprise. It was into this culture and into a band called Warm Springs that Lozen was born in 1840. The band was actually led by her warrior father. She grew up understanding what an important role women had in their culture, but she really wanted to become a warrior herself. She wanted to step out from behind her Apache brethren and fight beside them. So her dad allowed that. She proved to be a very capable young warrior in training, and she was very valuable with horses. Lozen in the Indian tradition actually means dexterous horse thief.
Oh.
And she would eventually really embrace that meaning of her name as she grew up.
I like it.
So when she was 12, she went through this woman's rite of passage. So it's kind of a coming of age tradition for Apache young women. She was sent alone to the mountains. I read that it was like a 3 to 4 day period where she lived on her own in the mountains. It was there that she was supposed to discover what her calling was and what her supernatural powers were, if she had any.
Sweet.
So as it turns out, she did. Her supernatural power happened to be her ability to track animals and locate enemies. And her calling was to be a protector of her people and a warrior. So she felt the call to be a warrior, and she was going to use these abilities in her fighting. So what they said she could do is she would walk in a circle with her arms raised, and she would do Indian Native American chants until the veins in her arms would kind of pop and turn a really, really dark blue. And that would be an indication of where the enemies were.
Oh, wow.
So that's what she did while in battle. She would also later use these superpowers because she became a shaman and a prophet. So she would leverage the spirits and help the tribe. So
she's a multitasker.
Yeah.
She was definitely a multitasker. I think she's one of the, because she wanted to step out into battle with the guys. I think she was always trying to prove herself. So I think she was always putting herself out there.
Had to be all the things.
All the things.
Yeah.
Let's do all
Wears
the things.
many hats.
Exactly. So in the early 1860s, when Lozen was in her 20s, was really the first recorded incident where she was actually fighting as a warrior, not just training, but fighting. The Apache nations found themselves embattled with the U.S. in a 25-year fight that started when an Apache chief was falsely accused of kidnapping a U.S. rancher's son.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the major battles during this was called the Battle at Apache Pass. And it's there that Lozen was thought to have probably fought one of her first battles. The Indians really surprised the U.S. in kind of their infantry and actually caused them to retreat. So they didn't necessarily win the battle. The U.S., they regrouped. They brought in some heavy artillery. And when they came back, they forced the Apache retreat. But at least the initial battle was certainly uplifting to the Indians because...
Get them on their heels.
Yes, they had them on their heels. So that was really nice. Lozen would continue to fight as a warrior alongside her brother Victorio. He would become the Apache Indian chief like his father. He would later describe her as his right hand, strong as a man, and braver than most. She was well versed in the bow and arrow, and he would describe her as strong, fierce, brave, courageous, and dedicated. She was definitely a protector of her people, and she would become known as a strategist for the warriors, better at military strategy than most men. And Victorio, her brother, would lean on her quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So they spent time fighting against the American and Mexican opponents on their ancestral lands. So they were just trying to hold on to their lands. Mm-hmm. Once that was a losing cause, once they found themselves forcibly removed and placed in reservations, they would fight against the conditions of the reservations because they were so deplorable. Uh-huh. They were sent to one reservation, the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona, and it would be eventually known as Hell's Bloody Acres. Oh. A U.S. general would forcibly remove the Apaches. Mm-hmm. He would put them together, and he would pit them against one another. Oh. And I think the goal was that they would take care of it themselves, and the Americans wouldn't have to do it. Wow. Lozen and her brother would eventually flee the reservation due to these inhumane conditions. Yeah. So it was a mess. It was a mess whether you were on a reservation or, when you're trying to hold on to your lands. Yeah. It was just a very tumultuous time. Yeah. During this time, there was also an Apache chief named Geronimo.
Oh, I've heard of him.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Seems familiar.
Right, yes. So Lozen would become a trusted advisor to Geronimo, and together Geronimo, Victorio, and Lozen, they worked together, tried to conserve their own land, and then fight for the conditions of their people, whether it was on a reservation, all of that kind of stuff. It just... Mm-hmm. Knowing the outcome as we do, it was honorable work, but for a losing cause. I did read some information off of history.com, mm-hmm. And there was a couple of cute anecdotal stories about Lozen. James Kawakla, something like that.
Gotcha.
He remembered a time when he was a child Apache fleeing American forces. He remembers running with his grandmother, following Lozen across the Rio Grande. He described her as a magnificent woman on a beautiful horse holding a rifle far above her head. He also recalled that after they crossed over into Mexico, Lozen left his grandmother in charge, and then she rode back across the Rio Grande to return to the fight. Oh. So that was she was a protector, and mm-hmm. she wanted to take care of people, but she always was drawn back to battle. So that was she was always going back to her brother, fighting alongside of him. Mm-hmm. Another story had Lozen assisting a pregnant woman who was just trying to get back home to her family. Oh. So they were crossing a desert in Mexico, trying to get back to the pregnant woman's reservation. So she wasn't even free at the time. She was on a reservation. But when Lozen and the scow took off, the pregnant woman... Right, they had a single gun, mm-hmm. they had a knife, and they had a 3-day supply of food. And they knew the trip was going to be longer than 3 days. Oh. But they started off on foot. During this trip, it was recorded that Lozen killed and butchered a longhorn cow for additional food.
Gotcha.
So knife came in handy.
Wow.
She captured, or perhaps stole, 2 horses.
It's in her name.
It is in her name.
It's her namesake.
Exactly.
Yeah. What does she? Yeah. What do you expect her to do?
She's got a license to, kidnap horses at this point. Yeah.
License to steal.
License to steal. Right. So she captured 2 horses to ease their journey since they started out on foot. She also assisted in delivering and caring for the baby once it was born. Oh. So this woman, kind of back to your comment, Cassie.
Yeah.
She wore many hats. But if you can see a man doing this,
right,
the delivering of the baby and the caring for the baby might not be part of his makeup,
right?
Where it was for Lozen. She was not only the warrior, but she was the nurturer. She was always watching out after people. So she was kind of the full gamut there. Mm-hmm. During this time when Lozen was kind of helping the families and the women, Unfortunately, her brother was killed in an ambush by Mexican soldiers when she was not present. Some warriors thought if Lozen had been there, the outcome would have been different. They really thought that she could have helped. So she took that very hard.
Yeah.
After her brother's death, Lozen would take up with Geronimo kind of on a more permanent basis, right alongside of him as the battle for Native American lands continued. But this was kind of the last hurrah. I mean, this was the last campaign of the Apache warriors and the end of the Apache Wars. They were able to free many of their people through raids and battles. And Lozen, along with other female Apache warriors, and there were a few by this time, they attempted to negotiate peace talks with the U.S. government.
Gotcha. Who probably kept none of their word. But they
I believe that to be true.
Okay, but they had talks.
And ultimately Geronimo did agree to surrender, and it was in an attempt to make sure that the remainder of his people, and their numbers had dwindled so much by this time, but he was just trying to make sure that they were safe and they were taken care of.
Yeah.
Well, they were taken to prison in Florida. So Geronimo, Lozen, and their followers, after Geronimo surrendered, they were taken to Florida and put in prison.
No.
So
all the way to Florida?
They went to Florida.
Florida is still holding up as a very interesting state, even back in these times, is it not?
Little colorful stories,
Florida
I'm sure.
All the way from the other side of the country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Savannah was a debtor's prison for the longest time. It was that landlocked. So Florida, you get the landlockedness. Also, harder to make it all the way back.
Just be easier to just build a new prison.
You would think.
Not enough resources.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, and I didn't really look into all that, but I know that she was eventually moved to a prison in Alabama.
Okay.
So she was incarcerated in Alabama at a place called Mount Vernon Arsenal. So it was a former U.S. munitions depot.
Yeah.
And they turned it into a prison to house specifically captured Native Americans.
Wow. Woot.
It's a very sad story.
Yeah.
She died from tuberculosis in Alabama at the age of 50 on June 17th, 1889.
She had a longer life than actually I was
She had a good run.
expecting, considering being a warrior and a prisoner of war, but 50, but I mean, still, yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she fought against Mexican and American forces for about 30 years.
Wow.
And it was a time of constant conflict for those Native Americans. So just to your point, I mean, just the fact that she lived that long was really a testament to her personality, her determination.
And her skills.
Yes.
She was probably a very good warrior / horse stealer.
I think they were counting on that. I think her brother leveraged that quite a bit. During this time she earned herself the nickname of the Apache Joan of Arc.
Oh, look at that.
The descendants of Lozen's family can still be found in Florida.
Oh.
Actually, represented at the Mescalero Reservation.
Okay.
And it's reported that the community continues to practice the coming of age traditions. Now, I don't think they send the girls up to the mountains by themselves for 4 days.
I'd
but
still
there
go.
is it sounds fun to me.
Man, like if I was like 13 to 15, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going for 3 days out in a cave by myself. Sign me up.
Exactly.
Yes. Is there Wi-Fi? Yes, there you go.
So I think now it's like a 4-day cultural events for the extended family.
Gotcha.
So there's activities, and she has a spiritual guide that leads her through a bunch of gates. Again, I don't know that she's out in nature by herself.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that transpire over multiple days.
The tradition is still there, just modern and
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. I like it.
And they continue also to celebrate the legacy of Lozen. So she is recognized still to this day, and they celebrate all of her accomplishments and what she was able to do for the Apaches.
Yay!
So there you go.
Look at that. I love it.
So she was in prison for how long in Florida? Like until forever, basically?
So
Her end?
she started fighting as a warrior in her 20s, and she died in her 50s. So when I want to say that her brother probably passed away kind of midway through. That's when she fought with Geronimo, things like that. So she was probably in prison, I mean, a good while, 10 years.
Maybe a decade,
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I'm just so curious what she did in prison.
Yeah.
If she shared about her journeys or was able to
Write it down.
Write it down or coach
Mhm.
alongside people, like motivation. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
very,
So the
very interesting.
very limited stories.
Yes, of
from
course,
her.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it led me to believe that it was just word of mouth. There was nothing written down. And the stories that I told were some of the ones that were repeated time and time again. No matter what article you brought up, you had 2 or 3 stories, and that was really about it. So, so I don't think that she necessarily wrote anything down. And
only.
the stories were just, passed by word
Still
of mouth.
great
Yeah.
stories.
Keep her memory alive,
Stories.
right?
Yes,
Yes.
and they still celebrate her. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
In Florida.
Yes, in Florida.
Yes.
Along with all the
Yes,
other
Florida.
crazy people.
Oh, cute. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Join us next week for another cool woman of history as the Gals Guide podcast continues. Thanks for listening. For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.